Hey, good morning Pacific time. It's Monday, March 10th, and I'm Carla King.
I'm Linda Joy Myers, and we're so excited to have all of you with us today talking about mapping your memoir.
Yes, and again, that is how to map your writing journey so you can start writing and sharing your memories sooner rather than later. So, just wondering in the chat, we're wondering if you are working on a story from your big memoir or a story you always find yourself telling or afraid of telling, or you wish your family or friends knew. If you could put that in the chat, we'll come back to this at the end. Time you changed your perspective on something or an event that shaped the person you are today. Let us know in the chat.
Yeah. We like finding out where you're coming from, what you're interested in, and where you want to go with all these ideas.
And a little bit of an introduction to us. I'm Carla King, and I'm the author of a book of short stories, memoirs, travel memoirs, stories from elsewhere. And I'm an early blogger, and I'm really used to and love writing short. It's hard for me to write long. And so I feel very comfortable with this short form, and I'm working on my China Road motorcycle diaries. I've also written a lot of books about publishing and self-publishing.
I'm Linda Joy Myers, and I'm the founder of the National Association of Memoir Writers, passionate about memoir for several decades. And my first memoir is Don't Call Me Mother, about generations of mothers and how I try to change the patterns. Song of the Plains, again, about generations and about healing and the process of forgiveness. And a new novel called The Forger of Marseille, about Vichy, France in World War II, and a young woman who forges documents to rescue refugees.
Nice. As I had said before, we're overwhelmed with the big book, Linda Joy.
Oh, yeah. So I'm a long form writer more, and Carla's more of the vignettes that we're going to talk about today. I love writing long form, and it takes a really long time. And really, there's quite a few stories embedded in a long memoir that can be broken out and looked at as standalone pieces. So we're going to talk about all of that today. And also, we're going to talk about the difference between memoir and autobiography, define what essays and stories and vignettes are, and look at this narrative arc, which is part of the map we're going to be talking about today.
Why write a mini memoir? Some of you may want to condense your book length idea into a shorter piece to share right now or explore storytelling angles. I love collecting my stories in anthologies. Of course, you can also get feedback. I hope you have a writing group or later a professional editor. And it's very exciting to share your stories now while you're finishing your book and create excitement and grow your platform. That just means putting your work out there and letting people get to know who you are, especially if you're going to publish if you're aiming for a publishing deal, or even if you're self-publishing, you want people to buy your book, right?
Yeah, they need to know who you are, and getting short pieces out in the world in some form or another will get people acquainted with you long before your book is on the shelves.
Yes, and it's so much more fun doing that while you're writing than after. This book drove me a little bit crazy. Share the memoir. The memoir title in this book is probably for marketing because this is an autobiography. This book by Cher follows her life from birth to today. And a memoir is something different.
Yeah, the whole thing about an autobiography is I was born and blah, blah, blah. Of course, they write it before they die, but it's everything. And for famous people, I suppose people want to know all those things. But a memoir is focused on a theme, and we're going to talk much more about theme and theme pieces today.
And memoirs are also less storytelling. Oftentimes, autobiographies are more factual, and they're often written by ghostwriters later. And memoirs are just this wonderful slice of life, like the pictures here, a slice of a moment. Like I write about 4 months in China or 3 months in West Africa. And that can be a memoir. But also, Linda Joy works with people a lot who just take a thread from their life and follow that through a memoir.
Yeah, so certain themes like themes can be about recovery or healing or certain angles of your story, like focusing on particular people or a challenge. A certain challenge is a themed memoir. There are so many ways to look at that theme, and it's, a long form work still.
Yes. And oftentimes it's what to leave out rather than what to put in.
Oh, yeah, you have to many of us write and then go, "Oh, whoops, I have 100,000 words. I need to not that's too long." But also you can learn to be selective as you're working along using some of the tools we're actually going to be talking about today. Big thing about memoir, in contrast to autobiography, is the meaning that you make of these experiences that you've had, what you think, what you feel, realizing that you are the protagonist and you're the person that the reader is going to be following and learning from. And this is true for short mini memoirs as well as a long form work. What is the reader going to be learning from you? This is a challenge, isn't it, Carla?
This is a challenge. Yes. My memoir is about, so with your big memoir or your mini memoir or essay, you should be able to summarize it in a couple of sentences.
Mm.
Whether you're writing one story after another to create chapters for your big memoir, those chapters, even the scenes that make up the chapters or the stories, which we're going to talk about in a minute, you should be able to describe it in a sentence or two
So
just to focus in.
when I was working on Don't Call Me Mother, I didn't know the title or the focus at first, so I did a lot of writing looking for that. But finally, so you'll hear in conferences and stuff, people talk about what's your elevator pitch. All they mean is what are a couple of lines that can tell someone what your book is about, which means you do need to have this focus as you preferably as you start out, and certainly with short pieces, we'll be really digging into that today.
Mhm.
And so for Don't Call Me Mother, it was my stories about three generations of mothers who abandoned their daughters and how I broke the chain of abandonment. It took me a few years to get there because we didn't have classes like Carla and I are talking, and memoir wasn't a thing then. But we do want to help you learn how to think in that focused way as you work on your memoir and build a repertoire of shorter stories.
And here today, we're talking about a short memoir. It's a short, or even a piece of your longer memoir that's a chapter. You've got a takeaway. Why are you telling this story? And it has a clear arc. We're all natural storytellers. We're all telling stories all the time, and even if we don't know it, we're telling a story with an arc, a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it usually has at least three scenes. To think about that the next time you're telling a story or hearing a story at the dinner table or around a campfire, and see if you can deconstruct it into these three scenes that we're going to tell you about.
Yeah, it's learning how to listen to something that actually comes really naturally. That when we're telling a story for people at dinner, we're shaping that story as we go into, oh, guess what? Or you'll never figure out what I'm going to tell you. And then boom, and then a few interesting bits. And then we have to get to the main thing that you're trying to tell and end it fairly quickly. And then I love this quote here. This is flash fiction. For sale, baby shoes never worn. Ernest Hemingway, the master of short statements.
And it makes me realize Ernest Hemingway would have been great on Instagram. He would have been an Instagram micro memoir, micro short story superstar. And people are doing that. And a lot of young people are doing that. And that's the shortest of the short. There's all kinds of short story, micro shorts they call postcards or sudden memoir or sudden short stories. And there are a lot of places to experiment and have fun and publish these as well. But there's a lot of range. Like Joan Didion, I love her because she writes short essays, she writes memoirs, and of course, there's a biography of Joan Didion that was written by a third party, by another different author. But I just love that she just writes what she wants to write and packages it into the format, or her publisher does, the format that is right for her at the time.
Mhm. Yeah, all those small stories in the bigger story.
Mhm. And narratively, if you don't know this magazine, online magazine, it's a great place to find and possibly publish your short memoirs. And the co founder, Brendan Spiegel, has this great description of what he likes a memoir to be. He says they go beyond beautiful language and show us exactly what the writer, and that's you, felt at the moment in time, which is what makes them so relatable. Whether your reader has ever experienced something similar to what you, the author, has gone through. And he has 5 essays that are among his favorite pieces. So you'll get the slides, and this is clickable. So if I clicked here, that would launch the place where the essays can be read.
That's a great way to learn. Look at what other people do, look at how they do it. How did you feel about those stories? Where did it click in for you? Things like that. You can really use that to help yourself learn how to do this thing.
Mhm. And the mini memoir just follows the rule of a short story or a play or a short film. And you can adapt a piece of your big memoir, a chapter, into a standalone story. And that's necessary because your big memoir chapters might have a cliffhanger that moves the reader along to the next chapter. It might have all these flashbacks and backstories and scenic wanderings, which we call vignettes, all kinds of context that we don't want in the little memoir.
Mhm. Yeah, and yeah, so you're writing a chapter in the context of the longer story, but here you boil it down and ask these particular questions. Go ahead,
Mhm.
Carla.
Okay, so the 3 act structure is the beginning and the middle and the end. And I often teach travel writing. And this is what we start with. Like I said, we're all natural storytellers and we do this very naturally, but we just don't know what words to call it sometimes. And the beginning is the setup: who, where, what's happening. And it's just one scene, one scene. The camera's not moving. It's just you're showing us what's going on right now. And then the middle is the all these things that you're working through, a problem or a challenge or a conflict or realization, until you get to a climax. And then act 3, which is the takeaway: what changed for you, what is the insight that made you write this story.
What you learned, what
Mm-hmm.
the aha is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the opening scene needs to introduce one character. Maybe obviously you are the protagonist, which I know it's sometimes hard to talk about yourself and write about yourself as a character, and set up what the story is going to be about, have a great hook, create a little bit of backstory, even if it's not stated but implied, and also give the reader a visual so that in their mind's eye they can see what's going on. And if somebody was making a movie, they could set the scene and place it and hire the actors to to play the
So,
parts. So one of my favorite examples of the setup is my friend Chris Collard, who writes for Overland Journal. And one of his stories is set up with this scene: his penetrating eyes hid in the shadow of a full brim hat. The sun glistened off his ebony black skin, wet with sweat from the midday heat. Your visa is expired. A
mm,
patch on his sand khaki uniform read Department of Immigration, Zambia. Now, this is, if you agree, this is a great setup. It introduces this Chris, who is probably in a Land Cruiser driving through Zambia. It introduces this other character. It sets up the premise, the problem, which is also the hook that makes you want to read on. There is some implied backstory here. he's traveling in Zambia, right? It starts in the action in media res. The story doesn't start with Chris packing his suitcase or his backpack for Zambia, and the scene can and the reader can visualize. Do you agree? Could you just put it in the chat? Do you agree that you can actually visualize this setup scene?
And for all short or long, we really need scenes which bring the reader into
Mhm.
a moment with sensual detail and the great description there. And we could almost feel the heat. And there's a lot going on in a very short time in this particular example.
Yes, because nobody wants to read about packing for the trip and all those pre-decisions. There is an exception. Ted Simon, the author of Jupiter's Travels, a wonderful travel book about his 4-year journey around the world, starts with packing. And he did this trip 60 years ago. So there was not the internet. So it
Culture.
was a little harder then.
Yay, the shift, the middle, the conflict. In every story that we read, that we keep reading, the middle is where things get complicated. Short or long stories in a longer story, because there's more layers of scenes with conflict, people who don't agree with each other, situations that come up that are challenging, layers of realization, like in a relationship where things you go, oh, I thought it was this way, but oh, wait, it's this other way. Oh, dear, what am I going to do now? And your character, you, the protagonist, and particularly will grow and change as you deal with these things and as in real life. And as you're working toward a larger resolution. And this is why people keep turning the pages in a memoir, because they want to know, how did this real person, not a fictional person, oh, fiction is wonderful, of course, but how did this real person actually solve this problem or deal with this illness or manage breaking their car down in the middle of nowhere? And how did they escape that situation? And there will be some kind of climax or an apex story where something happens and whew, the story moves on.
And a lot of people call this the muddy middle again, because this is where you're going to figure things out. And this is where a lot of people overwrite. And it's okay to overwrite the middle because it's easier to take things out than it is to put things in. You
Yeah.
probably know the beginning and the end of your story, but the middle is going to have all these obstacles and surprises, things that can happen in a lot in a full length, a book length memoir. You can have all of these things, reversals, that you want to do something, then you don't want to do something. But in a story, you need to choose probably one or two problems
Yeah.
for the middle to come to a climax, and then the takeaway, which does not have to be a happily ever after.
Somebody's writing something in the chat. I just want to deal with it for a second
Mm-hmm.
and talking about so a lot of people are having lots of conversations in the chat, which is fabulous. You guys will get the chat afterward. But the idea of some stories occur over a long period of time, such as childhood trauma and what happens after that, and what do people do about that? And so that is, yes, that fits a long form work, certainly to try to help the reader understand all that was going on. But if you do choose to write something shorter, for instance, along the way, you would pick a certain moment out of those long, complex layers and focus on that one. What was that moment and what did you do about it? And so I just wanted to fit that in because there are long stories that people do need to tell in that form.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to cite this story from the Narratively magazine. If I can move my screens away. This is not a happy ever after, and this is a great ending from a story called The Diary of a Bachelor Who Suddenly Became a Solo Dad to a Teenage Girl. This is a very last paragraph. I still worry about what not having a mother will do to her. I think about the feeling of abandonment that is coursing through some part of her soul. Maybe she'll be completely okay. Maybe one day she won't be. What I do know now is that whenever that time comes, if ever that time comes, we'll be in it together.
Mm, yeah.
So, why do you love this? Why don't you put that in the chat? Why do you love this? I personally think it's wonderful. Maybe you don't, but I will just say I love the open-endedness of it. I can tell. Sometimes editors will read the first paragraph and the last paragraph of your submission, and they, unless those two grab them, they won't read through the middle. What do you like about this? Maybe you can
I
put
love
that.
hearing it feels honest, it's relatable, there's the comfort of companionship written from the heart. It's unresolved real life. Yeah,
Yes.
relatable, vulnerability.
And also in the chat, some of you came in late, and I did have a poll. I wanted to ask you about what story do you aim to work on first? Are you working on a big book? Are you afraid of telling a story and you really want to? What are you wanting to write about in a short piece? And this, again, it could be a part of a longer memoir, of course. What part of your longer memoir, because I know many of you have this big project of a full length memoir, what part of your story, of your big memoir, do you aim to pull out? What chapter do you want to pull out and work on? Is it chapter one, or is it some chapter in the middle?
And there's quite a few people here that have books they've already completed
Mm-hmm.
and or are working on a new book also. And one thought is to look at what is a particular moment of change from your big book that you could use or use as a snapshot, a particular moment. Maybe it's not the biggest moment, but something that paints a picture of your experience in a scene in a certain time and place, for instance. So think about it that way. How can you take a snapshot of that moment?
There's a lot of, let me go back to this. There's a lot of reasons to even write the small memoirs after you've published your book, because you want to promote your book, you want more visibility for your book, you want to publish in as a blog post or a Substack or a giveaway. Somebody here is at a conference next month and she wants a short story for that. You can share stories from your big memoir, but you need to adapt it, again, adapt it to make it small. And then, of course, you write a nice biography of yourself and you can spread it around the internet for free on guest blogs. They need to hook back to your website, and voila, you have a platform. Also, it's easier to show a podcast host, for instance, one story from your big memoir than it is to. It's much more interesting than giving them an outline of the book or even expecting them to read the whole book.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's such a good exercise for our brains too, because we carry all the layers of all the stories in us, which is a challenge even in figuring out what to include in a longer memoir. But at the same time, each of them is a certain moment. Each chapter and each scene in your longer memoir could potentially be shaped into, you do have to have that beginning hook, the middle something, and the end. And that's the format of a scene in a long book. That's the format of a chapter in a longer book. And I don't know how many of you are thinking about structure in that way in your longer book, but it's very parallel, and you're just going to be grabbing something out and then shaping it so it does have that beginning, middle, and end.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to work on in our class that starts in a couple of weeks, finding your story and crafting that strong opening, creating an arc um, with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and editing it down so you're making the greatest impact and making the most meaning of your story possible so it becomes popular, so it becomes universal. And we can talk about this in the Q&A, which we're going to start in just a few minutes. We welcome your questions, and we have about a half an hour to explore what a mini or flash memoir is and how to write one. What we aim to do in this class is to get you to craft a publishable short memoir in 4 weeks. And we teach craft a lot, and sometimes it takes a lot longer because people don't have that kind of a goal. They are maybe working on a chapter. So we want you to craft a publishable short memoir. Now, some of you are sharing with friends and family as well, and this is great for a legacy memoir for ancestors to read forever as well. But, and again, we know how to tell a story naturally, yet sometimes when we come to write it, not knowing the parts can be a handicap because we just keep writing and writing. We do have discounts for writing and publishing circle members and NAMW members, and the price is $259, and you get a coupon. If you're not a member of the NAMW or the Writing and Publishing Circle, you can still take an advantage of just a $10 off coupon by using Early Bird 2025 before next Friday. And we are going to follow up with an email for you with all of these links and all the stuff in the chat that's going on.
Somebody
And
pointed out a
coupons.
typo. Somebody pointed out a typo to be March 24 and 31. All of our editing, you can see. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, good. Sorry about that. That's
Yep,
terrible.
we both missed it.
March 24th and 31st.
Yes.
And thank you. Thank you for that. It's right here when you enroll. Sorry about that.
4
And
weeks in a row.
so
It is recorded if you're not able to join during the day. We know some of you aren't able to do that. We record every class and put it on this platform that Carla is part of, and you can tell them more about it so that you'll have the teaching available to you as soon as you get off work.
yes. And the wonderful thing about the Writing and Publishing Circle is that it allows us to have discussion groups and writing groups on the platform. And when we're having a class, we always have a discussion group. So you can share stories, you can give feedback, you can meet each other, you can create writing groups and such, and trade stories so that you can start helping each other finish. And it's a wonderful for accountability and craft both.
And the support of each other. I have a request, Carla, for one of the questions while we're talking about this new class we want to teach.
Yes.
Somebody needs us to go back to the slides of which number it is to define mini, short, mini, and flash.
You're gonna get the slides. So we can go back to that. So this will be the beginning of our Q&A now, right on time. It's 10:32. Oh, I think I just passed it.
Yeah. So go on to, yeah, and then the next one, I think. There we go. There we
okay.
go.
Flash, micro, short shorts. I think flash, micro, and short shorts, you will see a lot on the internet about how many words those are. 100 to 300 to 500. It depends. If you're submitting to a online magazine or a journal, they will tell you what they consider micro, or they will call it postcard, and they will say 100 words max or 300 words max.
Yeah, they'll give the numbers there. People are asking about also things that we want to cover. I'm seeing them clumped together a little bit. It has to do with will we be talking about where to post things and publish them? And so some things that have been mentioned are Substack, and we will be talking about where you can send your work out and other places besides what we list where you can find places where you can send work out.
Yeah, Linda Joy, you and I were talking about this yesterday. Some of the places that we listed in the course are very difficult to get into. Some of the places are easier. I'll just say too, I publish a lot in my niche. Now, my niche, it ranges from more general women's solo adventure travel to very niche, which is women's motorcycle solo adventure travel. And so there are forums there's one called Adventure Rider, where I can publish a story and put my link in that story to have people subscribe to my mailing list. They like the story, they're going to subscribe to more stories, they're going to buy my book. So all these, I did promote my book, American Borders, on this platform, and I had hundreds and thousands maybe of copies sold via that platform. And it's also really fun when you find a niche and we forget about forums these days because we have all these blogs and things, but people are still using forums. So if you Google forum and then your niche topic, betcha there is one, and then you will have almost all of those people and there will be interested in your story or book.
Yeah. The recording is still happening. People are listing things about ways to record longer meetings, but I believe our recording is still happening.
Our recording will, you'll get it.
I
Definitely
don't know
will
what
get it.
that's about, so I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't worry. You'll get
So,
the recording and you'll get the slides.
so people are asking about word count also. Word count for a longer memoir and mini memoir, which we were just talking about. But so longer memoirs, the range I'm hearing about still these days is between 50 and 80,000 words. So if it's long, it can be longer if it really needs to be. And the needs to be is going to be based on what your editor and what your publisher think about how the story is going. And are there ways for you to boil the story down? For instance, the other day I was doing some editing for someone, and it was a really good piece, a shorter piece to submit, but there were little chunks that took me away from the main feeling and the main thing that was happening. They were details that were accurate for that person and they wanted to include them. But by taking out the details like that, for instance, it shortened it and it made the focus smooth out so that the story didn't get tangled up in little cul-de-sacs, which you don't want when you're doing a shorter or a very focused memoir. Good. The poll's back up, I see.
There's another poll. What is the status of your memoir right now? Some of you are just thinking about it. You have stories, but haven't organized it. You have a first draft, or you're working on the second or even more draft. I know. How many drafts did you have of your memoir before you published it, Linda Joy? Do you even want to say?
It took me years to do my memoir because it was also the era before memoir as we know it now was a thing. And so I didn't have these kind of classes that we're talking about focus. But people get worried about how many drafts. And I just really suggest it's not something to worry about. Think about it as a work of art that you are shaping to be better and more beautiful, not some, oh my God, oh no, I have to do another edit. Oh no. It's about how to make something better and more beautiful, sanding wood on a beautiful work of art and getting it to the place where it just glows and shines by itself. So it's more
Right. And so mine tend to be less, I tend to write fewer drafts because I've already written them as stories for maybe a women's motorcycle magazine or a travel magazine or something like that. And also today, we're also going to talk about in the mini memoir class how to use ChatGPT as a writing partner. And it was interesting because Linda Joy and I introduced this into our classes last year. And a lot of people had huge objections to using ChatGPT or any AI at all. And it's been wonderful because you can ask it to help motivate you. Okay, I'm stuck. Here's the story. How can I improve the beginning? So you can chat to it like a partner. So we want to share that with you as well as giving you the rules.
but they're not writing it for you.
They're not writing it for you.
That's the difference. Yeah, people are asking many times, how is a mini memoir different than essays?
Oh, okay. Wow. We just discussed this yesterday too. We had this big brainstorm about the first lesson in the course, which is a lot about that, the different forms and the different parts of a memoir or a story. Any story has that 3-act structure that we just discussed. It's easy to conceive of, but then you think about all the elements that go into it, especially for the opening scene, the hook. and then the muddy middle in the end. And then you have these scenes. You can also include what we call vignettes, which are more dreamy setting.
Snapshotty things, right?
Yeah, like in travel, we do this a lot. We see in environmental writing, and a lot of fiction uses vignettes. Cultural, we were talking about The Color Purple has a lot of vignettes. And Marguerite Duras wrote The Lover, and we were thinking the whole book is just vignettes. It's very dreamy.
Mhm.
So a story is very plot oriented, and we're going to talk about that in the class a lot. Is your story internally focused or externally focused? I write travel, and Linda Joy and I are wonderful partners because I am
Mhm.
so plot driven. I'm riding my motorcycle here. It's breaking down. I'm meeting these people, blah, blah, blah. And it's just action. And then Linda Joyce, when that happened, what were you thinking about? Weren't you afraid? What
Feel.
were you thinking? And that is more of the essay, like what are you making of it? It's required even in a plot-driven story, Linda Joy, but in an essay
We're
format, it's sorry, an essay
we're
format,
gonna add
it's
that.
more allowed.
Yeah. An essay is an exploration of an idea. This is how it's defined. And also look all this stuff up on Google because there's so much out there about these things. But it's an exploration of an idea, something you're working through, thinking about this, connecting the dots to that. And it is connected with meaning. There might be some plot to it, there might be scenes to reveal something, but it is about an investigation internally more.
And I just also love that I love essays, and early on Ralph Waldo Emerson's Solitude, and somebody put it in the chat, self-sufficiency. I actually wrote a story about solitude and self-sufficiency that was inspired by Emerson's similar essay. The essay form has changed a lot since then, and because people just don't have the patience to go through the mental machinations that they did before. The essay, the word means essay from French, to try. So the essayist traditionally is trying out ideas and then changing that idea and evolving. So it doesn't have much plot except for the internal plot of what the mind is doing, and that may or may not be interesting to your readers.
So people are asking about Substack again. So let's just touch on it now. We'll also talk about it in the new. So many of you about Substack or you've heard of it. You can set it up very easily and put whatever you want on there. It does naturally build an audience. Somebody said, how will anybody find it? The things that you first post should be a focus thing about you, who you are, what your interests are, what you're writing about. And there's very few shoulds, however. And that there's also, when you do a post, there's little tags. And so it could be about summer vacation, or it could be about trauma, healing trauma. It can be about anything. The tags, reach out, you know how social media works, reach out into the ozone and other people will see those things. And you can set it up so people can follow you for free. There can be a layer of inviting people to pay you for your work. It's optional completely. And just you get feedback from people about your pieces, though. I was amazed. I started about a year ago and I'm somewhat irregular. They say to post regularly. Yeah, I started out once a week and then it was too much, but some version of getting your work out there for people to respond and react to. And then you make friends. And so it's also a social media place where you make another friend, or some people start writing groups. There's Substacks where people have 3 or 4 with different threads and topics. And so it's pretty amazing. Carla, you want to add?
Linda, should authors set up a Substack instead of a website to create brand and point publishers to? I would always create, at least have your domain name, lindacoleman.com if you can, or Linda Coleman Writes, or Linda Coleman Author, and point it to your Substack. But you want to own the one thing that's really nice about Substack that is not true with Medium and other blogging platforms is that you get the email addresses for people who subscribe to you. But that said, as so many technologies have failed before. Substack could go down tomorrow and you could never get those stories back. So always when you publish on another platform, copy your stories. I have a Google Drive and I love Google Drive, Google Docs, because I can just put my all my writing in a archive there in case Substack goes down and I can't get to it anymore.
And Substack is optional. Some people don't want to be on it, so that's okay.
Mm.
There's also Medium, which is another one. And so each person can decide, do I want to put my work there? But always save your work in a folder. I suggest you write it in Word also because Word will help you catch your typos, which Substack doesn't do so well.
Yes. And I love tools like I love Pro Writing Aid. I pay for that. I have the lifetime subscription for my proofreader copy editor. Some people like Grammarly, some people like others, but Pro Writing Aid is my favorite tool. Also, alternatives, let's see, pre-publishing. Some people are afraid that if you publish your
Mm.
short stories that you won't get a contract for a book deal later. And there's two couple of answers to that. If you are Cheryl Strayed or somebody who's famous and you've published a bunch of stories and ask your publisher to write that book, to publish that book, they probably will say, no, you've already published it and people won't buy the book. But if you're a complete unknown or only known in a niche, you want to share your stories to the world like crazy so that people get to know you. And most of you who are writing long form memoirs are going to end up self publishing anyway, just to put it bluntly, because traditional publishing is broken. And though you can uh, hire a subsidy press or a custom press or a hybrid press to publish your book for you, it's fairly simple. And I love the control of self publishing. So get the word out. I published probably half of the stories in American Borders, and people are still buying the book.
Yeah. Yeah, these things about the concern about traditional publishing. Again, I work with a publisher in a lot of my teaching, and the tradition, we talk a lot about the traditional model. It, try it if you have a few years to spend looking for an agent and looking for a publisher. And sometimes people do get a traditional publisher, but better a small press. Small presses are really alive and well these days. And we can talk about those things later in the new class too. But getting your work out and people acquainted with you is the very best way to sell any book when you have your book done, because they will already know you and they will be interested in following you. It's amazing this kind of audience growing that can happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the world is really set up for sharing. And yeah, so what are the other questions? We have 10 minutes left. So
There's
if you have a question that hasn't been answered, why don't you type question in all caps and ask us the question again, because there is a lot going on in this chat. This is awesome. You
a
guys
lot
are
of networking going on. So
love it.
congratulations to all
Yeah.
of you for reaching out to each other and commenting, and you will get the chat today
Mhm.
also.
There's a lot of people who want to connect. I'm going to show you the Writing and Publishing Circle, which is a place to connect. It's free. There are paid areas. So I'm going to put that in the chat. That's where we teach our classes. And so you can meet and talk to each other there pretty easily. Heidi, I
Mm.
would love to hear about more about small press options. And then we'll get to Lorna. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer that, Linda Joy?
The question about
Small press options.
university presses are particularly strong these days. You'll need to do your search. Go to Google and search, go to Poets and Writers. In the back of Poets and Writers, there are listings both for journals and for small presses who are looking for particular work. Usually the small press are looking maybe for particular themes. They organize each of them in their own way, but you'll need to do some research on that and keep track like an Excel sheet of each one that you have found, what their focus is, what they're looking for, and there's a lot going on. So you'll just need to do that due diligence of research. And poets and writers, sometimes also Writers Digest. Is it still happening? Writers Digest?
I think it is.
It was going away, but I think it still exists.
Oh,
Uh,
no.
list places like that.
Mhm.
And also look in Facebook groups on Memoir. Sometimes they're posted there. There's a brevity blog that also lists lots of people who are writing short and who are participating in small presses. Those are just things off the top of my head.
Okay, and so people are asking about the coupon codes. We're going to send you the coupon codes. The NAMW will send you a coupon code for an early bird discount that will be $30 off until this Friday, the 14th. And then after that, the discount code will give you $20 off. And that's also true for writing and publishing circle members. So you'll get one right after this class. We'll put that out super fast. And then somebody asked, how long is each class in the mini memoir class? We like 90-minute classes. So basically, here's how it works. We have material in the class that you can look at before the class. Hopefully, you'll have time. Class one is already up. It explains lots of things about essay, scenes, vignettes, etc., and encourages you to choose a story and work on that story and share that story in our discussion group. Right. And so you can ask questions to us and the other students in the class. Well, what about, is this story better? You can like a story about better to start with and a story about B, etc. So there is a wonderful interaction in these classes, which is why I love the community aspect and the class aspect. Linda Joy and I will talk for maybe 45 minutes and show slides just like we did today, and then have a little bit of a break and then come back for a discussion. It's not just a Q&A. And what I love about the 90-minute format is there's plenty of time for you to get to know each other. We often have writing groups forming afterwards and create accountability for each other as well.
People are asking if it's generative. Yes, the idea is to write your stories and post them, right?
Yes, write your stories and post them.
We're
This
doing
is
a
not
lot
a workshop, so you won't be getting feedback like you would in a workshop from Linda Joy and me. We do read them and we comment on as many as we can, but we are also counting on you to encourage and read each other's work. And maybe you'll find friends in this course that you want to trade stories, the longer stories with as well.
Yeah, you're responding to each other, which in the last class we taught, people were really excited about hearing from each other.
Yes.
So,
So the slides, the chat, and the recording and the coupon codes will be coming to you later today.
yes.
For let's see, there's some copyright questions. Copyright, Susan and everyone, this is the most popular question that writers have when they're starting out is, can somebody steal your ideas? Sure,
Mhm.
somebody can steal your idea, but your copyright is set as soon as you write it. You can pre-copyright your work if you're really, there's one person in one of my current classes who's working on something very scientific, cutting edge memoir about his research. He is justifiably a little bit worried about copyright infringement. So he is pre-copywriting his work just in case somebody copies it before it's published, because you can sue, but you have to copyright it before you sue somebody. That said, in all the years that I have been working with authors, and I've been an author and I've been hanging out with authors, even many famous authors, I've only seen a couple of instances of copyright infringement. Jane Friedman's nonfiction book got ripped off by some, I don't know, some people in another country, which is hard to get a hold of, put a similar book up on Amazon. My friend Christopher Baker, who writes travel stories and writes for Lonely Planet and Rough Guides, has had some of his work completely lifted and blogged about as if it were theirs. And he's been able to handle that with a DMC takedown notice. It is really the least of your worries. You want your book, your ideas around as much as possible.
It almost never happens.
Almost never
I worry
happens.
about it. And in terms of people really stealing, your story is your story. It's about you, so it'd
Yeah.
be pretty hard to somebody to borrow it.
I would love to talk just a minute, the last question about being chronological or not. There are many ways to write a story, and my travel memoirs are chronological. The plot literally moves along as the place that I'm going in, but I've got a lot of flashbacks to back when my dad was helping me repair the engine on the motorcycle, which is how I learned how to repair engines, and that flashing back. I'm in China and I'm repairing the engine, and I'm flashing back to when my dad taught me how to repair engines in rural North Carolina. So you can mix it up. It's super fun to play with that stuff.
Yeah, there's so many ways to enter and develop a story, so many stories. And people want them. People, especially this time of our lives and this situation that we're in, stories are the way to freedom and joy and meaning and connection with other people.
Great. We only have 2 minutes left, and I want to encourage you to go check out the Writing the Mini Memoir, the Mini or Flash Memoir. Look for an email from Linda Joy at NAMW and me at Writing and Publishing Circle for the coupon codes that are unique to your membership. Honestly, you can just go to the Writing and Publishing Circle right now and sign up, and you will get that coupon code as well.
Carla, several people are asking again, how will the class benefit someone who's published already? Yeah, so I thought we covered that a little bit in that it gives you a new audience that will bring people to your book that you've already written. Would you like to add to that?
It's definitely a book promotion vehicle, and it also helps you expand your story. It also helps you write other stories that you may not have included in your big memoir, or do more research with. I always love to do more research, like where do the blue trucks in China, where do they get their goods? And I saw them all the time. And so I can write a blog post about the blue trucks in China, right? Which is interesting. And that can go on a Substack, it can go on a guest blog, it can go on your own blog. So it's an ongoing promotion for your bigger works.
Yeah, we don't put everything in our memoir. I took out 58,000 words when I was editing Don't Call Me Mother, and they have gone and can go into smaller stories. And so there's lots of ways to really increase people's knowledge of our work through these smaller pieces.
Okay, everybody, look for an email in your inbox from Linda Joy or Carla King, Writing and Publishing Circle, NAMW. It's been great having all of you with us, and we hope to see you again very soon.
Thank you all for coming.
Happy writing.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.